I bought my house about 3 years ago. It's this old farmhouse sitting on 4 acres of land. It's not a huge mansion or anything, but it's mine. It's quaint, cozy, and has that kind of rustic charm that draws you in, you know? But here's the thing. My property was built in the late 70s, way before the suburban sprawl around it even existed. The surrounding farmland got sold off about 15 years ago for an HOA development. But the guy who owned my place before me, he didn't sell out. He held his ground. And when they built the new neighborhood around him, he was just this one lonely house standing tall, surrounded by all these cookie-cutter homes and HOA rules. Fast forward to today, and I'm that guy. I'm the one in the middle of all the chaos. At first, it was peaceful. I spent the first 6 months fixing up the barn and just enjoying the fact that I had no neighbors to deal with. It was the dream, no one bothering you, no one complaining about your grass being too tall or your paint being the wrong shade of beige. I loved it. But then they elected a new HOA president. Let's call him Napoleon because that's exactly what he looked like, small, entitled, and with this air of superiority. Napoleon was a retired middle manager who clearly missed having people to boss around. He was short about 5'5" of pure entitlement. The first time I met him, he just walked up to my porch, no knock, nothing. I was out there sanding some chairs, just minding my own business when he handed me a clipboard. "We need your signature on the updated community guidelines," he said. "And you're 3 months behind on dues. We're waiving the late fees as a welcoming gift, but you need to set up autopay." I thought he was joking. I laughed. I politely told him I wasn't part of the HOA, and I pointed out the property lines explaining the situation. The guy turned purple. I mean, honestly, I didn't think it was possible to turn that shade of red. "Everyone in the HOA is in the HOA. It preserves property values," he said. "You use our roads and benefit from our aesthetics. You'll join or we will lien your property." I told him to get off my land, but he didn't move until I grabbed a crowbar. That's when he retreated, shouting about lawyers. But I never heard from any lawyers. Instead, I started getting fines. Fines for things like the unapproved paint color. My house is white, they required beige. Fines for having a commercial vehicle in my driveway, hello work truck. Fines for the grass being too tall. Honestly, I threw them all in the trash. They had no jurisdiction over me. I knew my rights. But that didn't stop Napoleon. He escalated things. He hired some private security guys, not real cops, just some guys in tactical gear driving around in surplus Ford Explorers with amber lights. They started parking at the end of my driveway at night, shining spotlights into my windows. At first, I called the cops. They came out, told the security to move along, and explained it was just a civil dispute. But it didn't stop. This happened 3 times, and every time I called the police, they seemed annoyed with me, like I was the one causing trouble. Then Napoleon really ramped things up. He started making false reports. Animal control showed up one day claiming I was running a puppy mill. I have one dog, a German Shepherd mix. It was ridiculous. Then court enforcement showed up because someone reported unsafe structural modifications to my barn. It felt like they were just throwing everything they could at me. But I had to deal with it. I had to take time off work, walk officials around, show them my permits, and just keep explaining the same old story. The breaking point came when I got home one day to find a tow truck trying to take my work truck. The driver said the HOA ordered it removed as an abandoned vehicle. I was livid. I blocked the driveway with my other car and threatened to call the police for grand theft auto. The tow truck driver showed me the work order signed by Napoleon. That was it. I went to a lawyer and we sent a cease and desist letter warning them that any further encroachment on my property would be treated as criminal trespass. We made it clear that I would sue them for interference with quiet enjoyment. Napoleon didn't back down. He sent a response claiming that under some obscure statute, the HOA had the right to enforce rules on adjacent properties that affected the subdivision. It was all legal gibberish, but it was clear he thought he was in charge, like he truly believed he was the king of this little world and I was the rebellious peasant. Then one night, everything changed. It was a Tuesday around 2 a.m. I was asleep when my dog started going crazy. He wasn't just barking, though he was growling and backing up towards the bedroom door. I woke up instantly. That's when I heard the sound of metal scraping against metal coming from the back of the house. I live out in the country and the police response time is about 20 minutes on a good day. I didn't grab my phone first. I grabbed my shotgun. I know that sounds extreme to some people, but There's something called the castle doctrine in my state. If someone is forcibly entering your home, you have the right to defend yourself. I shouted loud enough to wake the dead. I'm armed. Get away from the door. But instead of running, I heard a voice shout back. It was Napoleon. He was yelling about seizing assets to cover unpaid liens. He was trying to break into my house at 2 a.m. over some bogus HOA fines. Then came the sound of glass shattering. They threw something through the sliding glass door and I heard the lock turn. I retreated down the hallway using the wall as cover and shouted one final warning. If you enter this house, I will shoot. That's when the door slid open and 3 figures stepped into my kitchen. They were wearing HOA patrol jackets, carrying batons and what looked like bolt cutters. Napoleon was in the lead holding a flashlight like it was a club. He looked deranged. His face was red and sweaty, his eyes wild. He raised the flashlight and took a step toward me. I didn't hesitate. I aimed for center mass and pulled the trigger. Napoleon screamed, but he didn't drop. Instead, he spun around, dropping the flashlight, clutching his right hand. The shot had gone wide, and instead of hitting his chest, it seemed to hit his arm. The other 2 froze. Get on the ground, I shouted. Face down now. They dropped the batons and hit the floor. I kept the gun trained on them while I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. I told the dispatcher I had shot an intruder and was holding 2 others at gunpoint. The police arrived in force. They handcuffed me, which I expected, and took my weapon. They treated Napoleon's injuries and I was taken to the station. I didn't speak a word until my lawyer arrived. Once he did, we laid it all out: harassment, fake liens, trespassing, and the fact that Napoleon and his goons had broken into my home at 2 a.m. armed with clubs. The police investigation didn't take long, and it turned out Napoleon had tricked the security guards into committing a felony. They didn't verify his claims about having a court order. They were charged with breaking and entering. As for me, I was released without charges. In my state, breaking into an occupied dwelling at night is about the worst decision you can make. It's been 6 months since that night. Napoleon survived, though he lost 3 fingers and has significant nerve damage. He spent a few weeks in the hospital and then went straight to county jail. He was charged with aggravated burglary, menacing, and harassment. The HOA patrol company lost their license after the news broke. The HOA board dissolved and held an emergency election. The new board is terrified of me. I ended up suing the HOA, the security company, and Napoleon. The security company settled quickly to avoid a media circus. In the end, I got a nice payout, enough to pay off my mortgage and then some. Napoleon's trial is still pending, but his defense is laughable. He's claiming he had the right to enter my home as the HOA president. My lawyer says that's like claiming he can fly. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for shooting the HOA president when he broke into my house? What do you think? Let me know in the comments.